Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Sufrière today, where we look at the ongoing eruption of the Sufrière volcano in St. Vincent. And with me today is Mr. Lloyd Lynch, who is an instrumentation engineer at the SRC and currently the team lead for the scientific team on the ground in St. Vincent. Morning, Lloyd. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good to see you. So, Lloyd, what is the latest with the volcano? We had a very busy weekend with lots of lahars and so on. Can you again explain what's been happening? First of all, for those who may not know, just explain exactly what a lahar is and what happened over the weekend.
Right, so the volcano has been quiet over the last week. Seismicity is rather low. In fact, on a day-to-day basis, the seismic activity is on a decline. We're seeing smaller events and we're seeing fewer events. So apart from that, the system has been very busy in terms of secondary hazards, particularly lahars. Over the weekend, we had, I think, 11 or 12 lahar signals. Most of these occur on the western side of the volcano. Most of the signals were recorded on the Walibu stations. So a lot of those lahars came down in the wet Walibu gut, dry Walibu gut, Roseau gut, Larakai, and so on. Good. Generally, I think most of the precipitation occurs on the windward side of the island. This is true for most Caribbean islands. The northeasterly winds come in and they slow down and condense, and you get most of the precipitation on that side, with some of the clouds getting over on the other side, and you get less precipitation on the other side. So it's a bit bedazzling to us at the moment, the fact that we're seeing more lahars on the
leeward
other
side.
side.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Because we should be getting less precipitation. Usually there is a simple reason for this. I haven't worked that out as yet. It's also probably influenced by the fact that there's a lot more deposits on that side. So it's easier for the little rainfall to mobilize these
Deposits.
flows containing a lot of debris.
Right.
Good. So it's something that we'll have to study in greater detail. And so that brings me to the meat of your question, lahars and lahar monitoring. Good.
Well, before you go into that, is it that every time it rains that we will get lahars being generated?
I, based on the pattern that we have observed, it seems that's the case. It seems like that is the case because we do see small signals that that are, say, a tenth of the intensity of those that are widely reported, which means that there were some flows in the river that was heavier than what you'd get when there were no lahar deposits, no pyroclastic deposits around, ash deposits around.
And will the lahars continue for how long? Would this continue for months, years? How long can St. Vincent expect to be having lahars?
Well, we think it will continue for years because a lot of material has been deposited around the flanks. So all that material is there, and it will take several months and or even years
For that to
before
wash down.
it is washed up.
Actually, Lloyd, I wanted to talk a little bit about that material and those deposits. And so we've been telling people, of course, that unauthorized visits to the summit and areas around the volcano really should not be occurring. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, the fact that those deposits are actually still comprised of hot material, even though we would not have had an explosive eruption since April 22nd was our last one, that area still comprises of hot material, and why it is unsafe for people to be venturing into those areas. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the material that erupted from the volcano is several hundred degrees centigrade hot. Much of it went up in the air and collapsed and run down the sides of the volcano. There were a number of pyroclastic flows, and these pyroclastic flows are even hotter than the ash fragments that came up in the Plinian. Um, a large amount of the deposits are still there. They are buried. The earth is a very poor conductor of heat. So the top few inches will cool off. But if you dig down 9 inches or more, it can be over 100 degrees centigrade hot.
So
Good.
it could appear on the surface like it's fine
To
and
be
it's
cool,
cool, and then you step on that,
right?
and your
There are
foot.
sometimes area where the ash is very, very um, unconsolidated, loose. So you may step and your feet or your foot goes right through into very hot material. Evidence of this was seen last Friday. We had some some activity in the Roseau Valley on the western side of the volcano. There was a lot of steaming and steam puffs occurring. It actually drew a crowd on that side. Yesterday, I spoke to some fishermen who actually related what they witnessed. A lot of steam in the actual valley and lots of pops. So a lot of the pyroclastic flow deposits was actually reworked by maybe the lahar that came down and scour into the walls of the deposit. And you have these small landslides which expose the pyroclastic material. And some of that got into the water and it flashes into steam.
Into steam.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know
And
some
for it
people.
to flash into steam, it has to be more than 100 degrees centigrade hot.
Exactly.
So you have to be careful, when going up. If, in fact, you shouldn't be going up on the summit of the mountain.
Yeah, so that's one good point related to that, and the other point meaning that some people may see this steaming or whatnot and think that it's a resurgence in activity, or it's another explosion that has happened or is about to happen. But really, if they see that in those areas, it's really a reworking of the deposits, and it's just that the deposits are still hot underneath this very shallow layer, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
And I know that you are partnering with NEMO very closely, particularly through the Sufrière monitoring unit, to get the monitoring network up and running. And that's a little bit different from what the other team leads would have been doing, Adam and Richie and Rod and so forth, right? So what plans do you have for let's say for the next week or so in terms of getting the network up and running? What are some of the specific plans you have?
The plan is to restore the monitoring network to some level before the explosive eruptions. You will recall we lost everything we had at the summit during the explosive eruptions, and we also lost some capacity in the north in Fancy and Walibu stations. We would like to restore at least the Oya station. Fancy, we may not be able to do that right away because the fiber optic cable that links Fancy to Chateaubelair has been severed offshore. And for that, you need a special ship to come in and repair that. I think Digicel is putting measures in place to have that restored later in the year. Good. But we were able to determine that there is still signal at Oya, so we'll try to get that back running. We want to densify the network on the eastern side by adding a station in Upper Walibu, somewhere in the London region. On the western side, we plan to put in a station at, before I go to west, let me finish east. So we've done some reconnaissance work in the Greg's Mountain region. Originally, we're looking at putting a station in the Montreal Valley, somewhere in Mesopotamia region, but the communication is rather difficult here. So we've found a nice site at the Greg's Mountain, and we'll bring it down to a health center somewhere there. So we'll have more stations on the east. On the western side, we want to add a station at Fitzhughes. And well, we already had Walibu and Belmont, but maybe later in the year or so, we probably look at Richmond Peak, somewhere thereabout. And we do hope that we'll get partners. So far, the partnership has been going very well. I wish to big up Mr. Winston George, who is in charge of the G1. He was very quick to have us as subscribers. Good. And NEMO also was very quick to facilitate us getting the supporting material and so on to get these instruments put in place in very short order of time.
Okay, very good information, Lloyd. So thank you very much again for joining us on La Sufrière today. And just to our viewers and listeners to remind that the UWI-SRC and the NEMO are the official sources of information on the La Sufrière eruption. So please pay attention to those sources. And to remind again that visits to the summit and the area around the volcano, those visits are prohibited at this time. Thank you very much and take care.
Okay, no problem.